Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Molly Bradshaw, and I'm a faculty member in the Department of Baccalaureate Graduate Nursing. My colleague joining me today is Sarah Antle. She is an EDS and teaches math at Adair County Middle School. And today we get to kick off the new year with the Teaching, Learning, Innovation series, and we're going to talk about the utilization of audio feedback and voice threads as part of teaching, learning, classroom. So just to remind everyone, the purpose of our presentation is to explore strategies to utilize audio and voice feedback in our classrooms. So we have a couple of exemplars for you today, a demonstration. We're going to present some student feedback from our EKU students, but by the end of the presentation, we hope that you'll feel inspired to start using some of these strategies in your own classroom. So the objectives are just to explore some mechanisms and platforms about audio feedback. I'm going to present more of audio feedback for written assignments and using Mac and Apple products, while my colleague is going to present some more exemplars on math, hard science, and using more of Google Classroom strategies. We're going to talk about some best practices, things that we've kind of learned by doing this. Give you some examples and just, again, give you those comments back from our EKU students. So in the footnotes of this slide is our contact information and our credentials for the presentation, and we have no conflicts of interest to disclose. So the introduction is, as we all know, faculty who are more aware of their own learning preferences and learning preferences of their students tend to make more informed decisions about classroom material, classroom strategies, and there's a number of methods that you can use to assess student learning preferences, but particularly as we talk about, are you an auditory learner, are you a visual learner, are you a kinesthetic learner, are you a mixture or some kind of combination of these things. So there's a number of these indicators. I listed just a few that you might go back and explore to assess your own students in your own classroom. For myself, I'm most familiar in higher education with the VARC question inventory. And VARC is an acronym for Visual, Oral, Reading, Writing, and Kinesthetic Learning. It's on version 7.1 right now. But one of the things that I like about VARC is that it's free, and it's also just 16 questions. So it's a pretty quick, rapid, kind of down and dirty strategy to kind of get a quick feel on the learning preferences of your students. But as you read through the validity, the reliability of the tools, of course there's some limitations to VARC, but 73% of students who use the VARC learning inventory do find that they are multimodal learners. So they use a combination of visual, auditory, kinesthetic strategies. Only 15% of students who use the VARC inventory have a strong preference to only one style of learning. And just to share a quick example on the importance of this, I've made it a common practice in my own classroom that I insist that the students do the VARC inventory if they have not otherwise done it in another class, just so that they are aware of the results. But I also ask them to share with me so that I know my audience a little bit better in the classroom. And this is a student, her name is Norma Lesta, and she knows that I tell this story. But at my former university, I had used the VARC inventory, and Norma was a student who really struggled in higher education. She was in a master's degree nurse practitioner program, and what she learned through doing the VARC inventory is she is a pure auditory learner. So knowing then that she was purely auditory, we were able to get a learning accommodation for her, get permission for her to record her lectures. She was so purely auditory, she would read aloud her reading assignments and then listen to herself repeat them back. But knowing that that was her learning preference was a strategy to help make her successful. So especially in our higher education classrooms, I might encourage that we think about something like that. And we're all familiar with the learning pyramid that, as the retention of knowledge, the application of knowledge, things like that. But auditory comes a little bit above even visual learning. A lot of statistics point toward the idea that a lot of students are visual learners, but if our students can actively apply the learning, they tend to retain things more and know how to engage with the information a little bit better. I was looking for a little bit of classroom breakdown about results, and I apologize that I did not heavily go into a really methodical review of literature, but the easy statistics that I was able to find is that in a K through 12 classroom, the data that I'm looking at is reporting approximately 30% visual learners, 25% auditory, 15% kinesthetic, and 30% mixed style. So I'm not a K through 12 instructor. My colleague can probably speak a little bit better to why that breakdown occurs. But the interesting thing I'm reading in the higher education classrooms is I can't really find a hard percentage of students that prefer necessarily one style over the other, but there's a lot of primary research on learning spaces. And I think our Noel studio here at EKU is novel and consistent with that idea that the new millennial iPod Generation Y learner is very into their learning spaces. And a lot of the things that I was reading in higher education also says that adult learners tend to enjoy learning in their own space. And it's very important to offer them learning spaces as much as it is to offer them different styles and modalities of learning, meaning auditory, written, this type of thing. So just some interesting reading there. A few things to maybe keep to the forefront of our minds as we talk through some of the information today. The iPod generation, which is also called Generation Y, the millennials, are generally referring to people born after 1981. They are very into technology facilitated learning. And so for someone like myself, I'm in the generation that I tither on. I use technology for some things, but you're going to catch me still handwriting my schedule into my calendar and almost keeping a double record because I don't go, I'm in this between la la land. This generation prefers, they're very savvy, hands-on. They want personalized learning. And that's one of the themes that comes out in the auditory feedback literature is the feedback is that auditory feedback helps create a personalized learning experience. This generation feels less responsible for their learning. They tend to hold the educator a little bit more accountable for their learning. But some other things about the preferences, they feel that doing is more important than knowing. They feel a need for immediacy. They want immediate feedback. They want immediate results with things. They have a very low boredom threshold. They are multitaskers. They do parallel learning, and it's very non-linear and non-sequential. They are primary visual learners, at least according to this study that I was looking at, this review article. And they want virtual representations of things. So just some thoughts to keep in mind as we go through some of this. So in looking at a couple of studies about auditory feedback, if you're as old as me, I remember being here at EKU and having a little tape recorder, and I thought I was very high-tech and very savvy, and hey, in the 90s that was cool and very special. But I know at EKU, I drove. I mean, I'm from Russell Springs, so I was driving in the car, so I used that a lot to facilitate studying while I was in the car, and I think we still have a community here at EKU of students that travel back and forth. And there's a lot of technology strategies that we're starting to change in our classrooms, like flipping the classroom, stuff like that, that is incorporating some different technologies. But in this study, they looked particularly at second language students, and these students reported that having auditory feedback that accompanied written feedback improved the clarity of the written comments. Students actually preferred the audio feedback to the written feedback. However, they noted that if you don't structure audio feedback in a constructive way, hearing the audio feedback can actually cause worsening anxiety from the student if they hear something that is not structured in a facilitated way. But it did encourage self-reflection. And that has been my experience as an educator. Students will tell me that they're hurt and that they're upset when they hear my audio feedback, but after they calm down a little bit and they've gone back through it and they have self-reflected, it actually pushes them forward and improves their learning a little bit. In another study, they looked at auditory feedback, and I love these terms. It was talking about feedback versus feed forward. Feedback meaning auditory feedback reflecting on an assignment they completed or something in a retrospective context, and feed forward being that audio message of encouragement or suggestions for next time in ways that you can feed forward strategies to help them on future assignments. So I thought that was a really interesting term. But they criticized the nature of the audio feedback in this review in this particular study. They felt that good feedback should relate to your performance goals, your criteria. It should be timely, detailed, and very specific. They did circulate this in a questionnaire. They got a very good response rate, like 96% response rate. But the outcome was that the participants valued the audio feedback, again, even more than the written feedback. And they thought that it was more personalized, more detailed, and more supportive, which is consistent with what this new generation of students want. In the next study, there was a survey that they did in 2008, and 30% of the students felt that the feedback was prompt, which, translates to 70% of the students felt that feedback was not timely or prompt. And again, this study compared audio versus written feedback. They sent audio files to 60 students. Again, the students liked the personalized nature of the feedback. And what was interesting in this study, they found that the students were 10 times more likely to open an audio file than they were to look at written comments, which I thought was very interesting. And the recommendation from this study was to remind students when you're speaking and giving auditory feedback, to remind the students to have the assignment in front of them so that they can follow along through the information. And last but not least, we got to have a little qualitative jab in there. But this was a qualitative study that looked at an online learning environment. And I pulled this particular study because, again, I felt we have an online, we do have a brick and mortar culture, but we definitely have an online culture here at EKU. And they interviewed some students, came back with 4 themes related to their audio feedback. They felt the audio feedback was more effective than text-based feedback. It was associated in this online course with feelings of involvement and community. It was associated with retention of content, and it was associated with the perception that the instructor cared, which was very interesting. I thought that comment was very interesting. So how did I get into this? So this is about what I call pencils and apples. So at my previous university, I was teaching a doctoral project planning. They're doing their capstone project, and I had 20 students getting ready to write a doctoral proposal, which is an absurd number of students. It's heavy writing. It was 2 sections, but they're putting together a doctoral capstone proposal. So this is my kitchen table here on the left as I'm getting ready and I'm getting pumped up to start reading these enormous papers. And for myself, yes, I know how to edit documents in Word and give feedback, but when I have documents this big to read, I like to mark and write and this kind of thing. And I started having a little bit of panic because I thought, how in the world am I going to meet with 20 students and go over these papers when they start asking me questions about it, because this is their doctoral project, and of course they're going to have questions about it. And they have chairs and other supports, but I was teaching the class about how to structure this document. So I came up with the idea of using my iPhone and giving a voice recording that accompanied my audio feedback. Then I gave the students the written comments with their audio file, and absolute magic happened. But when I get into grading modes like this, even my dog starts to protest. This is my dog, Macho. He gets really upset when Mama gets into this grading mode, and probably many of you can relate to that. So, again, this is just an example of how I tend to mark and grade papers, and I move this over here, and you need keywords here, and scribble, scribble, scribble. But we've all probably been there as a student and gotten feedback from instructors like this. Well, how do you know what in the world this is pretty clear, omit, this has to be 250 words. But talking through that and getting the context of my voice, what I mean by that, I can usually explain something better to you if I can speak it to you than you can understand my gibberish. So the two things together are very powerful. So in that first exercise, there's two ways that you can do this on Mac and Apple products. So one is when you have your iPhone, if you go to voice memo, it's built into your iPhone, and this is the little icon that you're going to look for. As you record these voice memos, this is an actual snapshot from my phone, and if you look at my dates, these are some of my current students that I'm giving these little snippets of feedback. You'll notice that the times on my voice memos are very short, 1 to 2 minutes, and I organize them usually by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or by headings of their paper. So if I'm giving a comment on the discussion or the results or whatever, I name the audio file to match what the heading of the paper was. And also a standard issue in your Apple and your Mac computers is QuickTime Player. And in QuickTime Player, you can either do an audio recording or you can do a screen recording that has both audio and you can see the screen move at the same time. So that's another option. Those files do tend to transfer better, especially if you're airdropping like one Mac to the other. You can airdrop this very easily. But in all of these examples, I would just caution you to keep files smaller rather than larger, because they will transfer and go through email. And sometimes in Blackboard, I've noticed that it takes a little bit more time to upload if your file gets enormous. So it's better to have short snippets than one large audio file. In iTunes, that's another question. Yes?
Sorry, can you can you do the voicemail on your Apple but then send to a non-Apple iPhone?
Yes. So the question is, can you do the voice recording on an Apple and then send it to a non-Apple product? The answer is yes. It will transfer as an MP3 or MP4 file. So I've been able to have good luck with doing that. I haven't had any problems with that. Now, just one other thing to keep in mind about Mac is there is a dictation application in Mac. Some students are not aware of this, but if you just hit function on your Mac, it will dictate a voice. So that's another option if you wanted to record and dictate to be consistent. Maybe if you have a student that needs both written comment, that's another option for you. You could dictate and record your voice recordings like that. But as I said, there was a little magic that happened when I did this the first time in the classroom. What I found is that rather than having to meet with 20 students, I only had to meet with 3 students that were struggling the worst. And that was extremely instrumental. And this was the comment that I got from the student email. At first she said, I've never had a grade like this that's so low. Well, she was a terrible writer and she didn't use her resources, lots of things going on there. And she said, your comments seem harsh, and I cried. However, after I calmed down and went through it all again, I realized that you were right. And I need to improve, and she wanted to meet with me. And she was successful in the course. And I've had that experience now multiple times. We are so busy telling students that they're so great, or somehow students tend to think that they're so great. So it's not about trying to tear them down, but sometimes when they hear really precise feedback, they just can't believe it the first time they hear it. But when they go back through it again, all of the students are coming through on the other side telling me that they really appreciate it and that they really like it. So again, the lessons learned: keep your files small, name them systematically. So last name, date, heading of the paper, almost like you name syntax of your files for Word or anything else. Make sure you get permission from the students to share audio files with them, especially if you're sending through something that is not sanctioned by the know your institutional rules about sharing files and things like that. And make sure that students understand these policies so that this is not getting posted on Twitter or Facebook or things like that. They need to understand the culture of this is audio feedback, that type of thing. I will say that audio feedback has saved me in academic appeals, not at this institution, but at my former institution. If I had not had the audio file, it made it a lot easier. It's date, it's timed, it's stamped, and the academic appeals committee was able to understand the context of my comments. It really saved me a lot. So fast forward, in my fall course here at EKU, which is NSC 942 Nursing Informatics, it's a graduate course. There were 2 writing assignments in this course, and I did a little debriefing survey asking the students about my audio feedback. And I did, again, give them written comments, and I gave them audio files, and I put it all through Blackboard. It worked beautifully, no problems. So when you're in it, well, I should say when you're in the old version of Blackboard, everybody knows what I'm talking about. When you're giving the feedback part, like the grade where your rubric was at, you can upload your Word document or your Excel file or whatever the document is, but then you just upload it like an MP4 file, and it'll just go right there and they can click on it. So it was no problem in Blackboard. I have not used the new version, so that may change just a little bit. But I asked the students, in your other courses, have you ever gotten audio feedback? They overwhelmingly said no. I asked them, have you ever felt confused about written feedback that a faculty member has given you? 80% of them said yes. In the past, they've been confused about the intended meaning of written comments. I asked them if you've ever had to schedule an appointment with a faculty member to clarify the comments. Again, 65% said yes, I've had to go meet with my faculty member because I didn't understand what they meant. In this class, again, we coupled, did you find this method helpful to get written and audio feedback? They overwhelmingly said yes. But student comments, I think, are the most powerful. In your own words, what was helpful? First student said audio feedback was the best I'd ever received. I understood and I really learned from it. I'm not sure if it took more time, but it was meaningful to me, and thank you for doing it. The audio plus the written put the corrections in context. I understood the reasoning behind what was being written. And the last student, and I picked just a couple of what I called juicy responses, it relayed the true feeling regarding the specific area of work. I like hearing your voice directly instead of written notes. It's more meaningful that way. So all of that is consistent with the literature, about the personalized learning experience, putting things in context. It makes a powerful argument for that. And would you recommend that we keep doing this in future courses at EKU? And hands over, they said, yes, we would like more of this. So in the idea of expanding the use of audio feedback, my sisters and I here, we are all EKU alumni. We're actually all 3rd generation EKU alumni. Grandmother, mom, all teachers from EKU. I'm actually the only person in the family to not be a true teacher. I'm a nurse, that kind of thing. But I'm a teacher still in that respect. But I started talking to my sisters about, are you doing audio feedback? Are you this kind of, because we have teachers meetings in the kitchen, especially at Christmas and holidays and things like this. And so my sister Sarah, who's going to present, she teaches math. She'll tell you more about herself. But we started talking about, in the math classroom, you could use it like this. My sister here in the middle teaches 2nd grade. She could do it like this with her parent teacher. So we're talking a little bit about this. I've also had colleagues that use voice threads. So it's more of an asynchronous way to do exactly what we're talking about, where students might record their comment and then engage one another in online conversations or things like that. I've used a lot of voice threads with free conference calling, which free conference calling, if you set up an account, has an option to record the conference call and save it as an MP4 file, so that if they're doing a group project and they're conferencing, if a student can't make it or somebody had to work, which happens a lot in the nursing community because of the shifts that we work, the group can still get together and somebody can catch up by listening to the audio file. So it's something to keep in mind. But we want to share a little bit of use of this concept kind of across disciplines and in another setting besides a setting where I'm mostly using this for written feedback. So Sarah Annell's going to introduce herself and talk to you about using this in the Google Classroom and with Castify. So.
Hey guys, I'm Sarah Antle. I'm an 8th grade math teacher at Adair County Middle School, and I have been a part of an initiative through GREC. It's Green River, kind of an educational thing, and I also came from a district of innovation, so I'm all about using Google in the classroom and making students' learning more personalized. That's exactly what we use in our terminology in our meetings. I have used Google Classroom. This will be my 5th year, and I have done all kinds of different things with my classroom. I've been a flipped classroom, I've been a blended learning classroom, I've done flex seating, kind of like what you see here. This is my dream classroom, this whole area, because students do want that personalized, individual, creative space of learning, even in the math classroom. And so I just wanted to show you a couple of things that I do. How do I get this off? Slide. I did.
Okay, let's see. And just pull up your internet. Any tech support in the room.
I shall do my best.
Sorry, bear with us 1 second.
Hopefully this goes.
Sorry for the delay.
But I've used Google Classroom. Today I've left my classroom in the hands of a sub, and I have pre-recorded a lesson for my students. So all they have to do is get their Chromebook out. Yeah, that's good. I can get there from here. But they just go to Google Classroom, play the video, and it's me teaching the lesson through a video to them. And then they'll have a written assignment. And then tomorrow I go in, we kind of review. So it's as if I've never left the classroom. And I'm essentially teaching the generation here in 5 more years is going to be here at EKU. And so it's, so Molly and I was talking, and I told her about Screencastify. And so you just go to your Google store and type in Screen Cast. There we go. And it's free. You just download it, and this is going to give you your voice recording. Of course, I don't have an EKU account, so it's not going to let me do it.
You want me to log in?
If you can. But what this is going to do is it's going to take a screenshot of your the screen, your computer screen. So if you had a document pulled up of a student's, everything's through Blackboard. I've done my master's degree through Campbellsville University, all online. I've done my EDS degree through EKU, all online. And so every assignment I've had has been submitted through Blackboard. So you will have those writing assignments pulled up, and it's going to videotape your screen, your computer screen. So you could use your mouse to point, you could use your mouse to highlight. You can, if you want to talk about a syllabus or a website to go to explain to your students how to find a resource, how to log on through the library to access all those resources, it will capture all of that on your screen and turn it into a Google file. It saves automatically to your Google Drive, and you can just link it to your Blackboard. If you set up a Google Classroom, you can submit it as an assignment. There's a whole array of Google. I don't know how much EKU uses Google, but it's limitless. But so there's lots of different things that you can do through that where it automatically sets up a folder. Another thing, do you all use Google Docs assignments? There's a voice and comment. It's in the store. It's an extension, voice and comment, and it pops up a little thing kind of off to the side here, and you just press it, and it will automatically take your voice recording and have it linked in the document. So it's voice and comment. It's a really cool thing. If we can get go to the App Store.
Uncommon, I-N common?
I'm sorry,
Did you say income, voice income?
voice and comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, my country accent gets in the way, I guess. Hang on just a second. Are you? No, you're not. Okay.
Let's just try and find an image for you.
There might be a video. That's how I learn everything is through YouTube. If I have a question, I YouTube it. I mean, I'm born in '83, so I'm that first part of the generation iPod or Y. So my kids, if they want to know anything, they go to YouTube. I mean, that's where we find all our information. So there's tons of different things. So it's Screencastify, and then
I got you here.
You can either record.
It's 2 minutes.
And you can actually see my microphone here. In desktop, you're going to record everything that you see on the desktop, which means your viewer will see every single thing that you see. This can be a great option if you're doing an overall.
the cool thing
plan.
about this is it will automatically save that file to your Google Drive.
Using it there.
So then all you have to do is share it, get a link.
Record system audio if dings and clicks for different websites are important. It also gives you the option to embed webcam, which I chose not to do yet. You can
Plus
also
it's
go
free.
preview it. Now in tab mode, you have a few other options that you don't have in the desktop because in
You
tab
can
mode,
stop it.
you
But there's
can-
but look it up. It's a really it's a great resource, and there's tons of different apps and extensions that you can get through Google. So that was my part of the presentation, just kind of giving you a different perspective from what my kids do, because I do use technology with them as much as I can. Like I said, I'm a completely paperless classroom, and I'm math. We do dry erase markers and take pictures of it and have notes in our Google Drive, and my kids love it. So lots of different things that you can do, and that's the generation coming up to you all that will be wanting more of that. You want to close it out, Miles?
Sure. So, I mean, that's kind of what we have. We're happy to answer questions and go through that. And I apologize for the technical not working right there. We can do that offline a little bit. But if you have any other questions, we just hope that, again, to summarize a little bit, is that there is a place for audio feedback in your classroom, probably as well. As much as it may take you maybe a little extra time to put in the work to give the audio feedback, it may save you time and help you reap some reward of making that personalized feedback to them. Like again, for myself, it saves me having to constantly meet with students because it demystifies some of that that information. But whether you're giving feedback about how you did a math problem well or how you didn't do a math problem well, think about even in math, just the answer what is either right or wrong, but having an explanation of where something went awry could be very, very helpful too. So lots of applications. We hope you feel inspired to use that. And that's it, unless anybody has any further questions. Yes?
When you were talking, I thought you led us into VoiceThread and the options on VoiceThread,
Yes.
which I thought was so interesting because you know how you can pick either text, video, just audio as an option to comment, but you don't have the document with you on the VoiceThread.
Yes.
So I think that's what is nice about your system. But
Yeah.
I have to say, when I'm using VoiceThread, I love to go text because it goes up faster and I can read it faster than people droning on for 5 minutes with my students.
Yeah.
With a response, you know?
Yeah.
So sometimes I like text just for speed.
Yeah. And I tend to agree with you, but then I would also say that might be my learning
Right,
preference
right.
and your learning preference.
Exactly.
You know, so I think the best classroom strategy always for myself is to have multiple, you know, have a visual element, have the written element, have the auditory element. But, you know, I would just say that teaching online for me is a new experience, fully online, and I have struggled in my mind with how to engage them. You know, how can you be everywhere 24 hours a day all the time? And this has been a good solution for me. You know, that they can hear me, they know me, they got my little twang going on. But they know me and they know my voice, and so it's a connectedness thing too.
And if I can add to that, when I took my online through EKU, I'm thinking about getting my EDD. And so if I do that, EKU requires a staff recommendation, a professor. I don't know any of my professors that I have at EKU. I've never spoke to them on the phone. I've only done email. I don't feel like I personally know them. So it's kind of like, how am I going to get a reference? And they don't know me. So how am I going to get a reference from somebody if they don't know me and I don't know them? Because I don't feel like I know any of them. I wouldn't know any of them on the street. So that's just a point to her.
Mhm. Yes.
Molly, have you done any of this with, I'm kind of jumping ahead with student projects, and Sarah, you may want to jump in, because I like to engage, the more we have to move online, and the more I'm looking at winter term and summer term, and really thinking down the road, I don't want to give up that engagement piece. So have you used these with student projects so that they have to upload from a video and or text-based, and then you give the audio feedback? Have you flipped it?
So the question is for our online group, if you didn't hear, have I used this strategy in student projects that maybe go over a multi-term semester? So the answer is yes. So the picture that I was showing you before, the screenshot of my phone, is a completely exchangeable voice thread with doctoral students. I record my comments, they record back to me, and then at the end, they do presentations, and it's recorded, and then I give the feedback. But it's almost a totally asynchronous conversation because they're in one state, I'm in the other. But again, it's that. So yes, you can flip it in a number of ways like that. And that is the best example that I've seen in the nursing use of this, is that a student might present a clinical case, or they might present some type of problem that you might encounter in a work setting, and then I've seen other students be required to respond to that, and then faculty sort of give a summative response to that, and then they move on to another student presentation. So it fits very well with clinical cases. It fits very well with ongoing capstone master's degree type doctoral projects. So yeah, I've had a lot of good luck with it.
Google has the capability too. You can have 4 or 5 people on a Google slide or a Google document, and they can sit and type at the exact same time, and they can see what each other is typing, and you can go back and see revision history and what this person has added, what they've taken away. You could even do your voice and comment that I mentioned, that app where the teacher gets on and adds a comment, and everybody has a slide or a part in the document.
Mm-hmm. So I'm still learning some of that, mostly from her. And so there's a lot of capabilities out there that I'm not even. I think it's our natural tendency. We go for the technology that's closest to us and most comfortable to us, right? So for me, that's Apple and Mac. I'm an Apple and Mac user, so that's really the only reason that I reach for that. But I would say that Google has probably got the best comprehensive applications that I've seen. I'm just not as good as she is at using it yet, but I'm working on it. And I think that would probably be the best solution for all this, because as she's saying, you can even embed web links and YouTube files and all this, and it's keeping it on one flowing document for you. So especially I know we've had some development here on use of Google Classroom, but I don't think we've even scratched the surface to the capabilities of it. We're going to have to get more people like Sarah who have been using it 5 or 6 years to show us, and really to show us what fascinates me about our family conversations is she is right about this is what they're getting prepped to do. So in 5 years, I better know how to do at least some of this fancy stuff, right? So it's interesting. Yes.
So when you're online,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed you printed your papers off to give feedback on. Do you ever keep them out of Blackboard and then somehow get the audio feedback with that paper in Blackboard?
Yes, you can. It's just not my preference to do so depending on the length of the paper. So for myself, it depends on the length of the paper. So if it's only 5 or 6 pages, I can absolutely do that. Put my comments in Blackboard, but it doesn't change that I just have my written comments and I go through and speak what all of it means and go through it. And the same thing, you just have your written comments in Blackboard and just put your audio file with it. It'll still let you, in the part where you can give the students, you can type like a good job on this paper, you made an 86 kind of thing in Blackboard. There's a way that you just attach the file right there, just like you were attaching a Word document. But for myself, if I, again, am grading papers that exceed really about 10 pages, I tend to feel like I have to print it and carry around. But that's my own personal limitation. I'm sure there's more tech savvy people that never ever want to do that, but that's my preference for grading. Any other questions?
Can I just
Yes.
ask, for clarification, the voice threads you talked about, is that through Blackboard or is that through Google Docs or somewhere else?
So the question is the voice threads that we were talking about. There's a way. So the answer is yes to all of the above. I'm not familiar with how to do it in Blackboard with a feature that is in Blackboard, especially with this new Blackboard update. I haven't got to that yet. But as Blackboard currently sits, you can record either on your phone, your computer, and just simply upload it like you would any other file and just attach it into the comments that you're giving on Blackboard. You could do it through Google, you could do it through Mac, you could do it through Windows. It just attaches like any other file to that. So that's just going to be a matter of what you prefer to use and how you, but it can all be just simply attached and uploaded. Well, thank you. And if there's anything else, we're happy to stay around and talk.